On March 26, 1997, deputies from the San Diego County Sheriff's Department entered a rented mansion at 18,341 Colina Norte in Rancho Santa Fe, California. Inside, they found the bodies of 39 people, one of the largest and most infamous mass suicides in American history. They had been dying in shifts for 3 days.
And literally asking the question to myself, sorry, I said moment.
I think, what a waste. All of those 39 people, what a waste.
I just wish that there was some way she could have found something worth living for here.
And no one had called 911. No one had screamed. No one had changed their mind. They were dressed identically. Black shirts, black pants, black and white Nike decades. Their hair was cut short. Their bags were packed. Their glasses were folded beside them. In their pockets, a $5 bill, 3 quarters, and a driver's license. Identification, the kind of thing you carry when you believe someone is going to need to know who you were. They called themselves the Heaven's Gate Away Team. Their leader was a 70-year-old former music teacher named Marshall Herf Applewhite. He called himself Do.
Planet Earth about to be recycled. Your only chance to evacuate is to leave with us.
His partner, a woman named Bonnie Lou Nettles, was Thai. She had been dead for 12 years from cancer, and the remaining members believed she was waiting for them on a spacecraft traveling behind comet Hale-Bopp. They had been preparing for this moment for 22 years. This is the case of Heaven's Gate, and this is the open file. It is not a murder case. It is a case about what happens when belief becomes a door, and the door only opens in one direction, and 39 people walk through it because they have been told and have come to believe that what is on the other side is better than everything they are leaving behind. Marshall Herf Applewhite was born in 1931 in Spur, Texas, the son of a Presbyterian minister. He grew up in the church. He studied music. He became a choir director and eventually a professor at the University of St. Thomas in Houston. He was married. He had children. He was, by all outward measures, a respectable man. In 1970, his life came apart. The university dismissed him after learning of a relationship with a male student. His wife left him. He suffered what has been described as a mental breakdown, depression perhaps, or something more. He sought treatment at a psychiatric hospital in Houston. There, in March 1972, he met Bonnie Lou Nettles. Nettles was a nurse. She was 44 years old. She was married and had children, but her marriage was failing. She was interested in astrology and spiritualism. She led seances. She believed she was channeling a Franciscan friar she called Brother Francis. She was, in the taxonomy of the early 1970s, a seeker, someone who believed the answers to life's deepest questions were out there, hidden, waiting to be revealed. When Applewhite and Nettles met, something clicked. Applewhite later said he felt he had known her forever, that their meeting was not an accident but a reunion, orchestrated by forces beyond human understanding. Within months, they had developed a shared theology. They believed they were the two witnesses described in the book of Revelation, the figures who would prophesy in the last days, be killed by the forces of evil, and be resurrected before the eyes of humanity. They believed Jesus had been an extraterrestrial being. They believed heaven was not a spiritual realm, but but a physical spacecraft, and that God was not a deity, but an advanced alien intelligence who had seeded humanity on Earth as an experiment. They called themselves the Two. Sometimes they called themselves Bo and Peep. Later, when the theology matured, they would become Do and Ti, two syllables that were meant to be sung together, a single name for a single mission. They began recruiting followers in 1975. The first gathering, in a motel hall in Waldport, Oregon, drew about 150 people. 20 of them vanished afterward. They sold their possessions, said goodbye to their families, and joined the Two on a journey across the American West, sleeping in tents, begging on street corners, living in a state of constant movement designed to break down their attachments to the material world and rebuild them as something new. Walter Cronkite reported on the disappearances on the CBS Evening News. A score of persons from a small Oregon town have disappeared. It's a mystery whether they've been taken on a so-called trip to eternity or simply been taken. They had not been taken. They had chosen. And the choice, for those who made it, was absolute. By 1976, Doe and T had stopped recruiting. They had a core group of followers, the class, or the crew, as they called themselves. They retreated from public life and became a roving monastery. The rules were absolute. Sexual activity was forbidden. Drugs and alcohol were forbidden. Contact with family was permitted only with approval. Members dressed identically, ate identically, thought identically. The goal was to eliminate the self, the human self, the earthly self, the contaminated self, and prepare the soul for something higher.
My parents ran the Heaven's Gate cult. My wife was Yvonne.
What happened to my brother?
Is he still living?
This was the love of my life.
A child abandoned by her mother and her father.
Both your parents. Both. Did you have a moment where you said goodbye?
I just couldn't stop crying.
The theology was intricate and in its way coherent. Do and T taught that Earth was a classroom, a testing ground where souls were placed to evolve. Humanity was a failed species, or nearly so. The only way to reach the next level, the evolutionary level above human, was to overcome everything that made you human. Desire, ego, gender, the body itself. The body was a container, a vehicle, a temporary housing for the soul, which was not human at all, but a fragment of alien consciousness placed here to learn and to grow, and to either graduate or be recycled. When the time came, when Do and T received the signal, the crew would be lifted from Earth in a spacecraft, their bodies transformed or replaced, their souls carried to a place where they would live as perfected beings. This was the promise, and for a decade it held. Then, in 1985, Bonnie Lou Nettles, Ty, died of cancer. The theology had not accounted for this. Ty was supposed to ascend with the rest of the crew. She was supposed to be taken alive. She was one of the two witnesses, the immortal messengers, the alien souls in human form. And she had died in a hospital bed, like any ordinary person, and her body had been cremated, and she was gone. Do had to explain this. The explanation he arrived at, the explanation that would carry the group through the next 12 years, was that T had simply graduated early. She had shed her container and ascended to the next level on her own, and she was waiting there, on the spacecraft, in the evolutionary level above human, for the rest of the crew to join her. This was the pivot. Before T's death, the crew believed they would ascend in their physical bodies. After her death, the belief shifted. The body was not necessary. The body was an obstacle. The body was the thing that had to be left behind. And if the spacecraft came, and the crew needed to leave quickly, without their containers, without their vehicles, without the flesh that weighed them down, they would be ready. In the early 1990s, Heaven's Gate did something no cult had ever done before. They went online. The group had discovered the internet, and they had discovered that the internet was the perfect tool for what they were trying to do. It was anonymous. It was borderless. It allowed them to reach people without ever leaving their house, without ever standing in a motel hall in Oregon, without ever being photographed or identified or chased away. They built websites, first Higher Source, a web design business that earned them income, and then heavensgate.com, which outlined their beliefs in exhaustive detail. The websites were, for their time, sophisticated. They combined text, images, and eventually video. Long monologues by Do, speaking directly into a camera, explaining the theology in the calm, patient tone of a professor who knows his subject so thoroughly that he no longer needs to convince anyone. He is simply explaining. If you understand, you understand. If you don't, you don't. And people understood, or enough people. Slowly, through the 1990s, the group attracted new members. They came from different backgrounds. Some were spiritual seekers, some were computer programmers, some were people whose lives had cracked open and who were looking for something to fill the space. Among them was Thomas Nichols, the brother of actress Nichelle Nichols, who had played Lieutenant Uhura on the original Star Trek series. He was a dreamer, he believed. Years before the suicides, he had told his sister he was waiting for a comet. When Hale-Bopp appeared, he was ready. The group also attracted Richard Ford, a man who would eventually take the name Rio D'Angelo, the River of Angels. He was drawn in by a 1994 article in LA Weekly, joined the group, and stayed for a time before leaving. He would become the person who discovered the bodies. He would become the person who called 911. He would become the person the group trusted to tell the world what they had done and why. Comet Hale-Bopp was discovered simultaneously by Alan Hale and Thomas Bopp in July 1995. It was extraordinary, 1,000 times brighter than Halley's comet, visible to the naked eye, a phenomenon that would not return for more than 2,000 years. Astronomers calculated that it would make its closest approach to Earth in late March 1997. Almost immediately, the rumors began. An amateur astronomer photographed what appeared to be a companion object near the comet, a point of light that was not supposed to be there, that did not appear on any star chart. That defied easy explanation. The companion object became a subject of intense speculation. What was it? A star? An asteroid? A glitch in the camera? On the internet and on radio programs, particularly Art Bell's Coast to Coast AM, which reached millions of listeners, a different theory took hold. The companion object was a spacecraft. It was traveling behind Hale-Bopp, using the comet's tail as cover, and it was coming to Earth. The government knew about it. The government was hiding it. And when it arrived, those who were ready, those who had prepared, who had shed their attachments, who had overcome their human nature, would be taken aboard. For Heaven's Gate, the companion object was the signal. What members believed was T's spacecraft, the vessel they expected would carry them to the next level, the thing they had been waiting for since Walport, since the tents and the begging and the monastic rules, since 1975. since the day Doe and T had first looked at each other and known that they had been brought together for a purpose. They rented the mansion in Rancho Santa Fe in October 1996. It was a 9,200 square foot house in an exclusive neighborhood, the kind of place a cult should not have been able to afford. But the group had pooled their resources. They had sold everything. They had no use for money anymore. They paid $7,000 a month in cash. And they waited. The plan was called the routine. It was written down. It was precise. It left nothing to chance. According to a document reviewed by authorities, the 39 members were divided into 3 groups. The first group of 15 would consume the lethal mixture with assistance from 8 others. The second group of 15 would do the same, assisted by the remaining 8. The 8 who had assisted the first group and were now ready to follow. The final group of 9 would assist each other until only 2 or 3 remained, and then those last few would have to do it alone. Tie the bag, lie down, wait. The mixture was simple. Phenobarbital, a barbiturate, a sedative, measured precisely, stirred into applesauce or pudding, chased with vodka, then a plastic bag, secured with an elastic band around the neck. Asphyxiation, death within minutes. The members purchased the phenobarbital in Mexico. They stockpiled the vodka. They folded their clothes. They packed their suitcases. They placed their identification in their pockets. $5 bills and quarters, supposedly for interplanetary tolls, or some equivalent that made sense only within the closed logic of the group. They put on their black shirts and black pants and black and white Nike decades. Their arm patches read Heaven's Gateway Team, a reference to Star Trek's specialized exploration crews. Their arm patches read Heaven's Gateway Team. They did not believe they were dying. They believed they were departing. They were the landing party, and the spacecraft was waiting. Before the first dose was consumed, each member sat before a video camera and recorded an exit statement. They were calm. They were cheerful. Some of them laughed. They explained that they were not killing themselves. They were graduating. They were leaving their containers behind. They would step onto the spacecraft, their consciousness transferred to an immortal alien body, and they would live forever in the evolutionary level above human. No one said they had been coerced. No one expressed doubt. No one hesitated. Or if someone did, the hesitation was not recorded, not passed down, not part of the story the group chose to tell. The first group died on Saturday, March 22nd. The second group died on Sunday. The last group, including Marshal Applewhite, was dead by Monday, March 24. The bodies lay on cots and mattresses for 2 days. The house was immaculate. The purple shrouds were tucked neatly over each face. The glasses were folded. The suitcases were packed. The only weapon in the house was a 9mm handgun, packed in a suitcase, unused. And then, on Tuesday, March 25th, a package arrived at the Beverly Hills office of Nick Matsoukas, the CEO of a company called Interact Entertainment. Inside were 2 videotapes and a letter. The letter was addressed to his employee, Rio D'Angelo, the former cult member Richard Ford. The videotapes contained the exit statements and a message from Doe. The letter was a confession and a request. The group was gone. The bodies were in the mansion. Someone needed to find them. And Rio, the River of Angels, was the person they had chosen to tell the world. The 911 call, when it was released, was almost as disturbing as the discovery itself.
Hello? Yes, I need to report an anonymous tip. This is regarding a mass suicide. And can you give me the address?
Okay, what happened there?
Well, I think there was a religious group that committed suicide.
And how did you hear about this?
I was notified by mail.
Rio D'Angelo's voice was calm. He did not sound panicked. He did not sound surprised. He sounded like a man delivering a message he had been expecting to deliver. "I would like to report an anonymous tip," he said. He gave the address. He described what the deputies would find. He did not say the word murder. He did not say the word suicide. He called it an exit. The group's word, the group's framing, the group's way of making the unbearable sound like something that made sense. When deputies entered the mansion, they initially feared chemical weapons. The body positions, all lying on their backs, all facing upward, no signs of struggle, suggested something airborne, something toxic. They wore respirators. They moved carefully. And then, room by room, body by body, they understood. 39 people, ages 26 to 72, 21 women, 18 men, all dressed identically, black shirts, black pants, black and white Nikes, all with the same short haircuts, the same arm patches, the same peaceful expressions, all with identification in their pockets, all with a $5 bill and 3 quarters. The coroner, Dr. Brian Blackburn, told the press, "It seemed to be a group decision. They all had IDs. The house was immaculate." Immaculate. That was the word that stuck. They had cleaned up after themselves. They had washed the dishes. They had folded the laundry. They had packed their bags. And then, methodically, in shifts, over 3 days, they had ingested a lethal dose of barbiturates and vodka, tied plastic bags over their heads and died. The groups were arranged so that each successive group would tend to the bodies of the previous group before lying down to join them. The purple shrouds were pulled up, the glasses were placed aside, the bags were tied, the money was left in the pockets, as though someone, somewhere was going to need it. The exit statements are the hardest part of the Heaven's Gate story to understand. They have been studied, analyzed, excerpted, mocked, and mourned. But the most difficult thing about them is not what they contain. It is what they do not contain. No one cries, no one pleads, no one expresses doubt. The members speak directly into the camera, one after another, in a calm, measured, almost cheerful cadence. They say the same things in slightly different words. They are leaving their vehicles. They are going to the next level. They are ready. They are happy. Julie Lamontagne, known within the group as Junodi, was one of the younger members. She smiled into the camera and said she had never been more certain of anything in her life. Thomas Nichols, 58 years old, the brother of Nichelle Nichols, who had played Lieutenant Uhura on Star Trek, said, "You don't know what you're missing." The words were not sarcastic. They were not bitter. They were genuine. The words of a man who believed he was about to experience something his sister, his family, the entire human race could not comprehend. A former Green Beret sat calmly and explained why he believed he was prepared for what he viewed as the final step in the group's journey. The final mission, the last operation, the willful exit of the soul from the body. Marshall Applewhite, was both the first and the last voice on the tapes. He explained the theology one final time. The body was a vehicle. The soul was a passenger. The earth was a classroom. The next level was waiting. The comet was the sign. The members believed the spacecraft was real. Ty was already there. And now, after 22 years of teaching, of waiting, of watching for the signal, The classroom was closing, the test was over, and the graduates were going home. "We do not consider this suicide," he said. "We consider this a graduation." And then he took the phenobarbital, and then he drank the vodka, and then he tied the plastic bag around his head, and then he died, along with 38 other people who believed until the last synapse fired and the last breath left their bodies, that they were not ending anything, but beginning. In the years after T's death, the theology of Heaven's Gate became increasingly focused on the body as an obstacle. The body was heavy. The body was sexual. The body wanted things the next level did not want. The body was the thing keeping the soul tethered to the human kingdom, unable to ascend. And so, in the early 1990s, several male members, including Marshall Applewhite, underwent voluntary castration. They traveled to Mexico, where the procedure could be arranged without the questions that American doctors would have asked. They returned with their bodies altered, and with the conviction that they had taken a necessary step toward the next level. Applewhite himself had struggled with his sexuality his entire adult life. He had been dismissed from his teaching position after relationships with male students came to light. He had described his homosexual desires as a source of torment. He had sought cures. The castration was, in his view, the cure. The removal of the impulse that had caused him so much shame, so much suffering, so much distance from the person he believed he was supposed to be. Some former members described efforts to minimize gender identity and sexual expression, though the documented voluntary castrations primarily involved male members, to reduce the physical markers of femininity. The goal was not androgyny, but something beyond it, a state where the body no longer asserted its sex, where gender was not a fact, but an irrelevance, and where the only identity that mattered was the one that would be given in the next level. The castrations were not hidden. They were not shameful. They were discussed openly within the group and eventually in the outside world as evidence of the group's commitment. The question the rest of the world asked, how could someone do that to himself, was not a question the members asked. They had already answered it. The body was a container. You don't cherish a container. You use it. You maintain it. And when it becomes an obstacle, you modify it. You cut away what is not needed. You make yourself light enough to ascend. The Heaven's Gate website is still active. It has been maintained since 1997 by 2 surviving members, former cult participants who did not join the mass suicide, but who continue to believe in the theology, continue to answer emails, continue to wait for whatever signal comes next. The website is frozen in time, a late 1990s artifact, all star-filled backgrounds and underlined hyperlinks and blocky text that looks like it was typed in Notepad. It contains the group's complete written output, essays, manifestos, transcripts of Du's teachings, explanations of the theology, refutations of suicide, a position paper on why what they did was not what the media said they did. Our position against suicide is the most haunting section. The authors, presumably Du, or the surviving members, or both, argue that true suicide is not the death of the body. True suicide is rejecting the next level when it is offered. True suicide is hearing the signal and refusing to answer. True suicide is choosing to remain human when you have been given the opportunity to become something else. The website also contains the exit statements, the transcripts, if not the videos, the words of the 39, the names they chose and the names they left behind, the testimony of people who believed they were not dying, but being saved. not ending but beginning, not leaving anything behind except the heavy, useless containers they had been dragging around for their entire lives. The website has become a case study, a tourist destination, a punchline, a tragedy. It is one of the few websites from the early internet that has never been taken down. It has outlasted the media coverage. It has outlasted the late-night jokes. It has outlasted most of the people who remember March 1997. And it is still there, waiting, as its creators waited, for a signal that may never come. The Heaven's Gate cult did not die completely. Some members had left before 1997, Rio D'Angelo among them. Others had been following the teachings from a distance, not living with the group, not committed to the final exit, but still believing in the theology. Two of those believers, known only by their web administrators, their email addresses, their continued maintenance of the site, are still active today. What it means to survive Heaven's Gate depends on who you are. Rio D'Angelo found the bodies. He called 911. He was, for a time, suspected of something, involvement or complicity, or simply of knowing more than he could say. But he had not been living with the group. He had received the tapes and the letter in the mail. He had done what they asked. And then he had to live with it. The images, the smell, the weight of being the one who knew before anyone else knew. Other former members, those who had left the group before the Rancho Santa Fe mansion, before the comet, before the final exit, describe a range of emotions. Some feel relief. They got out. They married. They had children. They built lives that would have been impossible inside the group. Others feel guilt. They were not there when their friends and teachers graduated. They missed the signal. They stayed behind. Michael Conyers, a former member, described the rigidity of the group's lifestyle to interviewers. Everything was designed to be an exact duplicate. The pancakes, how they were cooked, how much syrup was poured, how many each person received. The shaving, the way male members were required to shave, the precise pattern, the identical result. A life in which every decision was made for you, down to the detail that should not have mattered. Because the only decision that truly mattered was the one you had already made, to stay, to follow, to believe. And then there are the people who almost joined, the ones who attended a meeting, who read the website, who felt the pull of a belief system that promised an answer to the question that nothing else could answer. The ones who said, "Not yet," who are walking around 29 years later with the knowledge that they might have been the 40th person on that floor, under a purple shroud, with a $5 bill and 3 quarters in their pocket. If only they had said yes instead of no. While believers continued to debate it, astronomers concluded the companion object was not a spacecraft. The amateur astronomer who photographed it believed it was real. Others believed it was a glitch, an internal reflection in the telescope, a bright star distorted by the imaging equipment, a coincidence that looked like a sign. The government never acknowledged it. The comet moved on. In April 1997, Hale-Bopp receded into the distance, growing dimmer and dimmer, and the companion object, whatever it was, went with it. The astronomy community was clear. There was no spacecraft hiding behind Hale-Bopp, no alien intelligence, no vessel sent to collect the graduates. The comet was a comet, ice and rock and gas, a visitor from the outer solar system, beautiful and indifferent and completely natural. But the members of Heaven's Gate did not believe in the astronomy community. They believed in do and tie. They believed in the 2 witnesses, the evolutionary level above human, the promise that the next level would arrive when the time was right. And the comet had arrived, and the companion object was behind it, and the signal had been given, and 39 people had answered it in the only way they believed they could. The appeal of the cosmology for believers was that it was largely insulated from disproof. You cannot prove that a spacecraft was not behind the comet. You cannot prove that the souls of the 39 are not, right now, living in alien bodies in the next level. You cannot prove that Do and T were wrong, because their belief system was constructed to be immune to proof. The comet came, the comet left, and the only people who could confirm what happened, the only people who could say whether the graduation worked, are dead. The Heaven's Gate mass suicide remains the largest in American history. 39 people, 21 women, 18 men, died in a rented mansion in Rancho Santa Fe, California, because they believed a spacecraft was hiding behind a comet, and that the only way to reach it was to leave their bodies behind. Investigators found no evidence that members were forced or deceived about the nature of the plan. They planned the suicides over weeks and months. They recorded goodbye videos in which they smiled and waved and explained why they were leaving. They cleaned the house. They folded their clothes. They packed their bags. And then they lay down in 3 groups over 3 days and died. Marshall Herf Applewhite was 70 years old when he tied a plastic bag around his head. Bonnie Lou Nettles had been dead for 12 years. The theology they built together, a fusion of Christianity, New Age mysticism, and science fiction, had convinced several hundred people over 2 decades. In the end, 39 of them followed it to its logical conclusion. Thomas Nichols, the brother of Nichelle Nichols, who played Lieutenant Uhura on Star Trek, was among them. He had told his sister years before that he was waiting for a comet. When Hale-Bopp appeared, he knew. He smiled into the camera and said, "You don't know what you're missing." And then he was gone. The Heaven's Gate website is still online. 2 anonymous believers still maintain it, still answer emails, still wait for the next level to return. The rest of the world has moved on to other cults, other tragedies, other questions that have no answers. But the site remains, the words remain, the exit statements remain, and the question that no one can answer, not the survivors, not the scholars, not the psychologists or the sociologists or the people who loved the 39 and lost them, is this: were they brainwashed, or did they choose? The answer, perhaps, is that both things can be true. A person can choose freely to believe something that destroys them. A person can walk into a philosophy, step by step, and not notice that the door has closed behind them, that the path has narrowed, that the only way forward is a way that no one should ever have to go. A person can be intelligent and kind and thoughtful and still believe that a spaceship is hiding behind a comet, and that death is not death but an exit, and that the people who love them will understand one day, in the next level, on the other side of whatever comes next. The mansion in Rancho Santa Fe is still standing. Someone else lives there now, someone who may not know, or may not think about, what happened in those rooms in March 1997. The lawns are manicured, the hills are quiet, and 39 people who believed they were graduating are gone. Not to a destination that can be verified, but to whatever exists beyond the body, if anything does. Beyond the container, beyond the moment when the plastic bag is tied and the drugs take hold and the world goes dark. There is no answer to the question of whether they were right, only the weight of it. And sometimes, in cases like this, that weight is all that remains.